All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started with just a few housekeeping notes. I'm incredibly excited to have you back with us. So thank you everybody who's joining us for what is our final keynote presentation of the 3 days of the virtual CLO Symposium. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's taken time to be a part of this event. I know it's not what we initially had planned. We would have loved to have seen you beachside down in the resort in Florida, but this is the next best thing that we're able to do at this time that we're all experiencing. So I appreciate everybody who's joining us. I'm glad we were able to bring in some new folks who maybe couldn't have joined us down in Florida, but now can since we went virtual. It's incredibly exciting to see you all here and see you all engaged with each other and with our speakers. So thank you, everybody. Just a quick couple of housekeeping reminders before I introduce our final speaker, keynote speaker here. Just a reminder, if you're on Twitter, be sure to use the hashtag CLOSYM if you're gonna be tweeting along with us, and be sure to follow us at CLO Media. There's still time also if you're competing for our leaderboard for the virtual CLO Symposium. There's a lot of people who are on there and still within striking distance of those top 3 spots on the leaderboard. So I encourage you to take time, visit the exhibit booth, engage in some activities, engage in some chats so that you can make sure you have a chance to be one of our symposium leaders. And then finally, I just want to make the note also that a lot of the recordings are being made available of the sessions over the last couple days. So be sure to go back into the auditorium. You click back on day 1 and day 2. As those sessions are available, you'll be able to see them and replay them from your screen right there. So with that, I'm really excited for our next speaker. Americus Reed is a professor of marketing at the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Business. He's the Wharton School's identity theorist. So he specializes in understanding consumer behavior and purchasing decisions and helping marketers understand that. But really what his work has really focused on is loyalty and brand loyalty and what makes people stick with brands. And you may be wondering, why is that related to employee learning and development, internal talent management? Well, he's going to talk about that today. But I think it's also important to remember that a number of our conversations over the last couple of days have related to marketing and how do we now during this time better engage with our audience, our internal audience, but also more broadly as we come out of this period, how do we make sure that what we're doing with our internal workforces is meaningful, it's engaging, and that we do the best that we can to communicate with them. So I'm really excited to hear from Americus. Just a couple reminders, say hello in the chat. If you have comments, I know Americus is gonna try to keep this pretty engaging, so use that chat to pop in your thoughts and ideas as we're going through here. If you have specific questions you wanna ask, you can also use the Q&A function. I'll be monitoring that as well and pitching that at Americus as well. So with that, I don't want to take any more time away from our speaker because I know he's got a lot to share. So please join me in welcoming Americus Reed.
Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate you. Good morning, symposium attendees and participants. I am self-quarantined and yet still incredibly excited to be here with you guys today because I get to talk to you guys about something that is super interesting to me, super important, something I've studied for a quarter century now. And I want to share it with you today because I think it has a lot of potential power to help you unlock the ability to really help the internal talent that you try to attract, to help that internal talent thrive. And so the name of the talk is going to be called Identity Loyalty, Work Identity and Finding Your Calling, Organizational Culture Hacks. And the whole point of this is literally to say that what we're trying to do here, guys, I want you to focus on this word identity loyalty. What we're going to try to do is build a brand internally, okay? And so what this means is, this means that we're going to try to leverage the power of what a brand is and bring it inside of the building. Okay, and so I want to talk today about why that has power, why that has import, why that has the potential to really unlock a kind of limitless energy, a psychic energy inside the building and the human talent that you really, really can leverage, especially during times of crisis. For example, what's going on right now with the global pandemic, to have that kind of cultural cohesion that can really make things work. And I want to kind of start today by getting you a little bit warmed up in terms of the notion of what it means exactly to attempt to try to build a brand. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you some pictures of some brands, and I want you into the chat box, as Mike was saying, I want you in the chat box to simply do a very simple thing. When you see the picture of the brand that comes up, I want you to type into the chat box what immediately comes to mind. So let's start with this brand. When you see this, type into your chat box what comes to mind, what jumps to your head, what thoughts. It's like free association, what immediately jumps to your mind when you think about this. I'm looking at the chat line right now. Coffee, daily coffee, great coffee, warmth, good coffee, welcoming environment, expensive, overpriced coffee, cozy place to work, overpriced coffee, frappuccino, group meetings, other things, morning, community coffee, community, I love that, free place to meet, they know my name, internet access, the airport extended off. So these are the things that are coming to mind, right? If you think about what this is, what is Starbucks doing? What are they doing? They are selling overpriced coffee? No, that's not what they're doing. What they're really doing is they are providing an experience. The word community came up, access to meet other people, to a morning routine. These are the kinds of things, right? This is what's going on right now with respect to why are they able to charge $6 for a cup of coffee? Right? You can get that exact same thing probably at the Wawa or Dunkin' Donuts. Why are they able to charge this? They're able to charge this because they have something that goes above and beyond the stuff, right? They are offering an additional layer of something that makes potentially to some consumers a very appealing brand to them, right? That's an example of this. I want to do another example of this. This one, same idea, same exact exercise. Type whatever comes to mind when you see this particular brand. What comes to mind? What are the thoughts? What are the associations? What are the images, the emotions, if any? Thirsty, delicious smile, sugar, refreshing, fun, caffeine, longevity, Diet Coke addiction, ice cold, polar bears, what else? Caffeine, all-American, lifestyle, Pepsi, alternative, be careful there if you're from Atlanta, too much sugar, childhood drink, refreshment, Diet Coke, morning addiction, Diet Coke, other things that jump up. Here's what's interesting about this, guys. When in my class, I do a blind taste test every semester where I let the students taste Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and RC Cola. And when I take the labels off and I let the students just taste the products, they are unable to tell the difference between Coke and Pepsi above and beyond chance. Okay, that's interesting, right? Because what it's saying is that we've got a commodity here, right? Okay, you might look at this and say, this is malted battery acid. What is this thing, right? But what Coke is doing is we're going to build something around this, right? The iconic shape of the bottle, the brand. We're going to create happiness in a bottle. Someone said polar bears, right? Polar bears. We're going to create something different that goes above and beyond the features. And it's that something different that has the potential to potentially resonate, emotionally connect with people, right? And it's not going to be everybody. Not everybody's going to want to be on that train, but it's going to be potentially, if you do this right, a significant attraction to a group of consumers who could become potentially loyal to your brand. I'm going to do another one. Here's another example. Before I actually show you the picture, I'm just going to do a gesture. And I want you to tell me two things, what this brand is and what it stands for. I'm just going to do a gesture. It's not the gesture you're thinking of, but I'm going to do the gesture. I'm going to do it 3 times so you can make sure you get it. Someone tell me what that, guys, is it Nike, Nike, just do it. Nike swoosh, Nike, Nike, yes. 100% absolute metaphysical certitude that you know what that is. That's point number 1. What are the things that come to mind? Just do it. Athleticism. What other things pop to your mind? Performance. Jenny says performance. Abby says just do it. Michael Jordan, yes, make it happen. MJ, style, sports, excellence. Jordan, got to be the shoes. Dry fit. Everyone is an athlete. If you have a body, you are an athlete. Athletes, shoes, sneakers. Guys, listen to me very carefully. When you see this, this is a brand, but it's trying to be something more than a brand. And I challenge you, you will never, ever, 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 ever see Nike talking about how they make the stuff, right? They'll never show you the shoe and say to you, these are the shoes and they are made out of this type of leather in this manufacturing process to make this type of material for the laces. They never talk about that. Instead, what they talk about is what is popping to you guys' mind right now, which is this notion of something greater, right? Transcending your life through sport, performance, taking sport as a way to become something greater than what you are. It's transcendent, it's aspirational, it's emotional. They're trying to build the brand. This is what brand is all about. What about this one? How about this one? What pops to mind when you see this particular one? What jumps to mind immediately in terms of thoughts, emotions, ideas, cars, reliable? What else? Fix or repair daily. That's not so good. Model T, poor quality, built up. American. Mike says American. Trucks, country music, American. Run. Fun on road. Found on road dead. Right? Henry Ford Mustang. Listen to this. Kimberly says, love my Ford Edge. Right? Built tough. Guys, listen to me very carefully. So what is Ford? I saw the word American come up there 2 or 3 times. American. Think about that. What are they trying to do? It's a car. Right? So in some senses, there's tons and tons of cars that will get you from point A to point B. Tons of cars will do that, right? So how do you differentiate? Well, maybe one way to differentiate grandfather's Edsel. Didn't take bailout money, is what Michael says, right? Trucks, built up. One thing you might do if you're a car is you might try to endow that brand with something else, with an identity that other people can connect to. And think about this now, an identity, American identity. Can I make Ford an American identity? That's what's trying to go. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to endow this brand with something greater than the stuff, something greater than the utilitarian features, the what of what the product is, and try to give it something greater than that. Okay, here's another example. So we're going to stay in the car category. Same exact exercise, thoughts, emotions, and ideas. When you see this particular brand, what comes to mind? What comes to mind when you see this? Clean money, cool, Musk, Elon Musk, Elon, future, exclamation point, fuel economy, cheap, clean, expensive, Elon, my sons continually bugging me to buy for them. Yes, sustainable energy, environmental, responsible, fancy cars. Guys, listen to me very carefully. Tesla, okay, Tesla is, now you might be shocked by this, but Tesla, right, is worth more than Ford and GM combined. Right? And guess what? They have never done a commercial. They have never put an ad out. They have generated their business all from word of mouth, right? So one of the things that is interesting about this example, I bring it up to you because Elon Musk, the word Elon came up several times. Elon, guys, listen to me very carefully. He's part of the brand. So he's this visionary. Someone said future, exclamation point. He's a visionary. He's this weird kind of quirky nerd guy who's like, I think I'm going to take on an entire industry. I'm going to take on the fossil fuel industry. I'm going to build a company, a solar energy company. I'm going to build a company and compete with NASA. This is like, you look at this guy and you're like, wow, that's, some people will say, that is amazing. I aspire to that visionary kind of do anything is possible kind of idea. And so what I'm saying to you is that not everybody's going to like it. Right? But the people who buy into that vision, that Elon Muskness, if you will, are going to potentially be super loyal, super advocates of the brand. Why? Because they're not just buying an electric car, right? An electric car, there's lots of electric cars that are going to be out there, right? What they're buying is a little bit of the Elon Musk vision. And right now, yes, Lindsay, Tesla is working towards profitability. And so right now, guys, Bezos wasn't Jeff Bezos from Amazon, which I'm going to talk about later on from a human resource perspective. Amazon didn't make money for the first 10 years. Okay, so we got to think about what's going on with these different types of companies that are building the brand, the power of the brand that's so powerful, and how can we learn about the power of that brand building exercise that creates loyalty, that we can bring in some of those principles into what we're doing in terms of building human talent inside the organization. What about this one? Here's an example. Here's another example. What jumps to mind when emotions, thoughts, ideas pops into mind? Every single person, guys, if you have kids, you've been to one of these theme parks, right? You can take yourself back to those times. Disney, right? Disney is like, we are going to create something here. We're not going to, listen to this very carefully. We're not going to call our employees employees. We're going to call our employees Imagineers. Okay, you got to catch what just happened there. You have to catch what just happened there. We're going to brand an internal cultural we're going to create an organizational culture whereby everyone believes that they share a vision that has to do with bringing happiness, fun, magic, detail, cast members, happy vacation, magical world. Everyone plays a role, plays a part in being able to create that magic and deliver it as a customer experience. And at the end of the day, it's all of these people, these cast members, these Imagineers that bring that brand to the world and that create the magic. And if you don't have them buying into the culture as to the why they're doing this, why this is important, to make sure that the experience is positive, magical, happy, consistent every time that consumers touch the brand, if you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to consistently create this powerful brand like Disney. So my point that I'm trying to make is this: when you're thinking about building a brand, there's all kinds of things that you can do that draw upon the power of the brand building process, right? Why do we care about brands and creating a brand identity inside the building? Why do we care? It's because of this. Brand identity is complex. It's a concept that goes way beyond the common notion of just, can I come up with a logo or a tagline, right? It's more than that. Why do we need brands in our lives? I want you to ponder this potentially philosophical question. It's because consumers recognize the name and they recognize a kind of consistency that they want to be a part of, right? What do brands do? They allow customers to become familiar with us. They allow us to facilitate trust in the quality and reliability and effectiveness of what we're doing, right? So today, here's my argument, the thesis. The brand strategy has evolved into a very, very, very rigorous and complex scientific method that seeks to fuse the brand with the consumer, the client's customer perception of themselves. And we call this kind of an identity-focused style approach, protocol of brands. It's about self-expression, right? Can I put my brand inside of you? Can I get you to think my brand is a powerful symbol of self-expression, right? Then if I can, there's some powerful concepts that come around that. So branding is not limited just, by the way, guys, and this is why we're gonna make the jump from the brands and products that we know and we love that are iconic. We're gonna make that jump to why does this matter inside the organization for the CLO, the chief learning officer that's creating, nurturing the human talent. I'm gonna make that connection very soon, but I want you to understand that branding is not limited. Why we're focusing on this is because branding is not limited to just consumer products. Guys, it's everything. Listen to me, it spans everything. Charities, governments, rock bands, countries, everything. My own university is a brand. All of these things. These are, regardless of the sector, organizations are learning and hopefully understanding now, especially post-COVID, that branding with the sole purpose of just getting a name out there, getting a logo out there, getting familiarity is not enough. It's not a formula for sustaining your profitability and success. Competition allows customers to be more selective, and the organization who has the ability to create the iconic brand can, and get this, most closely reflect the identity of the customers. Guys, that's going to be the companies that really reap the long-term benefits. So I want you to focus on that and think about this, because all of these brands that I've talked about, these iconic brands, these super powerful brands that you probably don't think about it, but it's not by accident. It's not by accident that Apple is a powerful brand. It's not by accident that people are super loyal to the Apple brand. That didn't happen just because. There's something that's, yes, the design is beautiful, and Steve Jobs was this visionary, said, I'm going to create this and I'm going to design it exactly how I want it. But there was a kind of customer, there was a kind of understanding, if I can bring delight to the customer, if I can make the customer the center of the argument, then to make this connection with what I'm doing, then I can convince you, if I'm Apple, that this thing called an iPod is somehow so different than these things called MP3 players. When in reality, an iPod is just a branded MP3 player. But they created a language for the loyalists to use. I have an iPod. No, they have all that other stuff. Those are MP3 players. This is an iPod. And so how do you create that magic? How do you create that psychic energy that you can connect with the consumer? And what are the things that these powerful, iconic brands have in common? It's this. There's little ambiguity as to what will happen when we touch these brands. Guys, listen to me very carefully. When you're building the internal talent, if you have to think about these 4 elements, we have an expectation of what's going to happen when we touch that customer. We have a very well-defined brand narrative, which I'll get back to in a second. And this is the most important part for this audience. You have to catch it. the culture of high employee internalization of the brand ideals. And what I'm going to talk about is building the brand inside the walls of the organization, why you should do it, why you should understand the principles of getting the people to buy into the mission and getting them to really feel like there's a connection, there's a reason. There's a reason to believe. There's a reason to get up every day and go to work and put yourself as a team leader into this setting and work with others and do something greater than just yourself. This is about building the brand within the organization and creating the right kind of human talent to do that. And where I'm going with this, guys, where I'm going to go with this is I'm going to introduce this concept of the extreme version of this internalization. And it's what I refer to as identity loyalty. I'm going to say that word several times throughout the talk. Identity loyalty. What is identity loyalty? Identity loyalty, guys. Identity loyalty is a very special case of branding. What do I mean by that? Let me give you some examples of this, and let me give you the underlying impetus of why this is powerful. It goes back to a conversation and a discussion from a very, 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 very prominent TED Talk given several years ago by a guy by the name of Simon Sinek. Here's what this guy said. Very fascinating TED Talk. By the way, last time I checked, this is the third most popular TED Talk of all time. You may have seen it. I have to bring it to the forefront again because he said something in here that was incredibly powerful. He was talking about leadership, right? Leadership. And he was talking about why do certain leaders create massive following? Why do they create die-hard evangelistic loyalists? Why do some leaders create that and others don't? And what he said was he was talking about the connection. He was talking about the reason to believe. And the argument that he made, he was making an analogy back to Apple, right? Iconic brand Apple. He was making this analogy. He said something very, very, very poignant, which stuck with me for a very long time. And here's the statement on the slide. You got to catch this. You have to catch this. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Okay, I'm going to say it. I'm going to start preaching from the pulpit here. People don't, I got to say it again. You have to catch it. People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And his argument, which is fascinating if you unpack it, sociologically try to understand it. His argument is saying that, listen, the traditional question of how can I convince you to just think that my product is just better in terms of the features, that's wrong. That's going to not be sustainable. It focuses on what, right? It reflects a transparent attempt to try to sell you something. That's a transaction. However, listen to this very carefully. The question of why. Why would my employee, listen to this very carefully. Why would my customers, my employees, why would they use my organization, my culture, my brand to define themselves? Why would they do it? That's a much deeper question, right? It's the question that says, can I get my organizational culture to reflect alignment of my employees' sense of who they are and what I stand for? What is my why? Question number one. And then how do I communicate that consistently and actively, proactively to the people inside my organization? And my argument is you start with the why. Guys, if there's no reason to come together in a consensus of achieving a goal as an organization, the people, the stewards of the brand are inside the building. If there's no reason that they buy into your why do you think it's not going to be possible to create a connection to the outside world because the people inside the building don't believe it, right? So the whole point of this is to say, start with the why and create something to create a connection between your why and someone else's who. You didn't catch that. That might have been a mic drop. That might have been the first mic drop. Take your why and create a connection with someone else inside the organization's who. What does it mean? It means identity loyalty. Identity loyalty is the situation that occurs when listen to this very carefully. The values and ideals of the brand are perceived by the employee or the customer to be in tune or aligned with their own to the extent that the organizational culture, the brand, if you will, comes to represent the self, and the self represents the brand. So there's a fusion of identity such that the person connects and says that this is a source of self-reflection, self-identification, identity. This is something deeper than just doing a task every day. My identity is involved is integrated into what I am trying to accomplish as a member, a very important member of an organization. And my argument is that the smart brands will do this, will try to connect to us internally through this dynamic called identity loyalty. So my argument is, guys, as COOs, chief learning officers, what you need to try to be thinking about is how can I reimagine what I'm doing so I can move a step or two or three or four or five closer to creating this idea of identity loyalty. And this is very, very different from a branding perspective, very, very different from sort of the traditional viewpoint. The traditional viewpoint says, you know what we're doing? It's about value, purely rational, solely looking at utilitarian features, right? Products, services, and information, right? What do? This is what we do. And it's difficult in that context to yield desired outcomes because things are changing so quickly. I mean, the global pandemic is one example of a massive brand crisis, right? If you are a brand post-COVID and you didn't invest in creating a relationship with your customers, you're going to come out at the back end of this in much worse situation than those smart companies who were customer-centric and had this identity loyalty approach that we see on the second part of the screen here. It's based on values, alignment with self-expression, alignment with identity. How can my organization, my products and service, how can I reinforce a sense of how you feel aspirational when you are doing your work? How does this brand become a means to do this self-expression? And how can I create this differentiated organizational culture to be able to tap into the power of this notion of loyalty? And by the way, when I say loyalty, I say it's very, very different. We often misuse this concept of loyalty. We often don't understand it, right? And this is a great point by Tom Lewis. Tom Lewis, thank you, Tom, for the point. Tom says, yeah, brands tend to retain their identity loyalty. Here's the thing. Tom's right. Misaligning with politics, though, can quickly breed disloyalty, right? So the question, Tom's point is, very important question here, like thanks, Tom, what should I create as the DNA that is the heart of my why? Should I get involved in political ideology? Should I step into that potential hornet's nest? There are pros and cons. This is a double-edged sword, as Tom is pointing out here, right? It's hard to do this, right? But some companies will do it. Example, Nike. Oh, come on. Nike, right? Nike came out and said, we will align our brand with Colin Kaepernick, okay? What happened? Twitter blew up, right? People are burning the shoes. They are setting the shoes on fire and putting up videos on social media. What did Nike say? Nike said, it's fine. Because here's what they said. They said, we know who we are. We know who our demographic is. This is who we are. We're a bold company. We do bold things, right? We take these really gutsy sorts of moves. This is another example. And we're going to bet on the fact that for some group of consumers that's out there, the Colin Kaepernick and the political ideology that's wrapped up in Colin Kaepernick, as we associate with that brand, we're going to bet on the fact that there's a group of consumers that are going to look at that individual and say, you know what? That might be the younger generation's Muhammad Ali. Whoa. So now what we're saying is Nike's like, I'm going to get a piece of that. And I know there are going to be a bunch of people who don't like it. But guess what? As a brand, the whole point of branding and marketing is to say that I know who I am and I know who I'm going to try to attract. And I'm okay with not attracting everybody. That's okay because that's what really good target marketing is. So the identity loyalty approach is about aligning values. Tom's right. You're going to have to pick values, and it's going to depend on your own view of this. If you want to bring in political ideology, if that's a strong part of the identity that you want to try to endow within the organization, you're going to have to think about that. But you're going to have to live with it too if you also decide to do that. Okay, so I love this. So identity loyalty approach is what we're going to talk about. Why? Because loyalty is not loyalty. There's different types of loyalty. One type of loyalty that often gets confused as loyalty is what I'm showing on the left-hand side of the slide here, right? So transactional exchanges, boom, just transactions, anonymous transactions, that kind of thing, that creates something called inertia. Sometimes people get confused and they think inertia is loyalty. Why? So it's like, Americus, you bought the same shampoo 15 times in a row in your basket. You're loyal. No, I'm not. What that might mean is I have a habit, I have a routine, and this shampoo just happens to meet a satisfying kind of preference of mine. And I don't really want to think about shampoo because I don't really care about shampoo. So I'm just going to keep buying. However, if something happens in the marketplace, this happened to me, by the way. I was buying, for example, this bottle of, I didn't know the name of it. I didn't know the name of the shampoo. I was buying the lime green bottle of shampoo over and over and over again. One day, the company actually changed the color of the bottle. So when I went to the store to go reach for the lime green bottle, I couldn't find it. And guess what? I switched on that day. Why? Because there was no loyalty. There was inertia. That's about a transaction. That's something different. When we're talking about the right-hand side of the screen, the relationship spectrum, collaborative exchanges, we're talking about something much deeper. We're talking about complete integration of the customer with the value system and the why. And when you reach that level of integration and that level of fusion, you get to this thing called identity loyalty. And it's much more about creating an advocate and someone who buys into what you're doing, creating advocacy. That's what we're trying to do here. And so this is what we're thinking about. Brands do this really well if they're really good. Brands that appeal to customers' own self-perception of their identity, they create that bond that's almost impossible to sever, right? So you get this notion of identity-focused branding. And here's the way it translates. Guys, this is where it's powerful from an employee perspective, from a human resource talent strategy perspective. This is where it's powerful. Being an employee communicates to others who I am or who I want to be. So there's a potential to create that brand ambassadorship, right? So identity-focused branding is really about this, because if you can create the brand, the organizational culture, if you can make that part of who that person is, then what will happen? They will rationalize things that they need to rationalize to be able to stay on board and connected and synchronized with your organizational culture. Not only that, look at this fourth circle at the end. Any perceived attack on the brand under the premise of identity loyalty is perceived as an attack on me, and I will defend. Now you have to catch this. What this means is that identity loyalty makes people motivated to protect the brand, because protecting the brand or the organizational culture is the same as protecting themselves. And we know fundamentally that there's a human psychology that says, if I'm under attack, I have to defend. So the power of identity loyalty is that if you can make this connection, the self-expressive connection to your employees or your customers, you're going to create this rationalization process. You're going to create this entire component in which people will defend you, talk about you, positively defend you for free. So what you get, guys, you got to catch this. Identity loyalty means that you get yourself a one-woman, one-man walking marketing department for free. Okay, and so this is the power of harnessing this so that you can create something that's very, very potent, very, very gratifying, and help an employee get to not just doing a job, but getting to a calling, something deeper, something that's connected. And so that's the power of this. And I want to show you some anecdotal examples of this, and also some empirical research that bears this out and validates some of this. This is an example, and we talk about Apple all the time. I've analyzed the difference between Apple. I can guess that a lot of people might actually be watching me on some kind of Apple device at the moment. And so Apple is an example we go back to all the time. Why? Because guys, listen to me. It's not rational. It's not rational to stand outside in the middle of the night in a long line to wait in the cold to buy that shiny thing in the box, right? That's not rational. You can wait. You can get the thing. You can order it. Wait a little bit, right? What in the world would possess someone to do that, to stand out in the cold? It's something else going on here, right? Apple creates a kind of magic around, there's a community of Apple loyalists. We've done the analysis. We have analyzed how Apple loyalists, the difference between a consumer who's super loyal to Apple versus a consumer who reports loyalty to Microsoft, and it couldn't be more different. And what we find is that the way they talk about the Apple brand is so much more powerful. It's visceral. It's almost as if they're talking about politics and religion when they're talking about Apple versus Android or Apple versus PC. It's very, very powerful. Why? Because Apple understands I got to create this magic. Yes, the products are beautiful. Yes, they work. Yes, there's a powerful ecosystem, all of that stuff. But above and beyond that, now there's an attempt to create a kind of deeper, guys, listen to me, a deeper emotional connection here. That's the power of this. And so I want to show you an example of this. I have a colleague who is in our circle known to be like a crazy Apple loyalist. Total Apple guy. Probably every time you see him, he's got 6 Apple devices. He got the watch, he's got an iPad, he got the iPad Pro, he's got the MacBook, he's got everything. He got the iPhone. He just shows up. He's like a walking Apple billboard, and his name is Chris Fralick. And Chris, one time, he sent this tweet out. We were shocked. He said, "I've tried them all, and this is the best fitness wearable you can get, called the Microsoft Band. Nice job, Satya Nadella, who was the new CEO of Microsoft at the time, coming in." And we were shocked because we were like, oh my God, Chris, who is a partner at a company called First Round Capital, known to be like a tech head and like Apple loyalist. And we couldn't believe it, right? So it's interesting. I jumped online and I said, wow, that's interesting. Here's what happened on the Twitter sphere not long after that. It's just Chris again, and he's saying, my Apple Watch arrives today. He's whining a little bit, 28 days later than someone who ordered theirs 20 minutes before me. So I'm like, I wanted to respond to this. I said, Chris, what happened to your Microsoft Fitness Band? I mean, you were sort of like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen since sliced bread. What's going on here? Are you wearing both? And here's what Chris said. It stopped tracking GPS, and it's heading to the museum with the many, many others that have come before it. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because look how easy that was. Look how easy it was for the Microsoft Band to not live up to an expectation. It stopped tracking GPS, boom, it's gone, right? But what you will find is if the Apple Watch stops tracking GPS, right, what will the Apple loyalists do? They will say, okay, wait a minute, I'm gonna figure this out. Why? Because I love my Apple products, right? So when you build in identity loyalty, you build in a kind of, you build in a sense of, I will stick with you. As a brand, as a company, as a service, as an organization, I will stick with you through thick and thin. And it's very, very powerful when you're able to actually do this, right? And so what's interesting about this example is that if you can harness this, then you create a kind of cult of personality almost in some senses, because Apple can then say, hey, guess what? Buy a new charger. Oh, or hey, you know, the phone is folding in your, what? It's bending? No, you're holding it wrong. Right? This is what happens. Let me show you a really quick little video that's poking fun at the Apple culture, but that makes some pretty salient points here. I'll show you this.
First came the iPod, then a slightly thinner iPod, then a tinier iPod, then a taller, thinner iPod, then a taller, thinner iPod that shuffles your songs, then a pink one, a blue one, a green one, then an even smaller iPod, then a wider iPod, then an iPod you can touch, then an iPod you can talk on, then an iPod you can talk on with a G on it, then a shorter, fatter iPod, then a shorter, fatter iPod that shuffles, then a thinner iPod you can talk on with a 4 on it, then a gigantic iPod you cannot talk on, then a gigantic iPod you cannot talk on that's a little faster, then a white one. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, wait! Then a thinner, taller iPod you can talk on. And now a bigger, but not gigantic iPod you cannot talk on. We're Apple, and you're suckers. Don't forget to buy a new charger.
Now I mean, we laugh at this, right? We laugh at this, but there's some truth there, because in some senses, what's going on there is that, you know, why is it funny? It's funny because, yeah, there is that kind of passion about it. There is this kind of like, man, we're on the train, baby. We are in the Apple matrix, and good luck trying to unplug us, to use a kind of Neo, if you will, and Morpheus analogy. But this is what happens, right? Only the most successful organizations understand, guys, knowing their employees so that they can position the brand to become part of their human talents identity. That's where we're headed with this. And guys, just as a point of parity here, this is huge. There's tons of, I could show you for the next 2 hours, tons of research evidence, because I'm a social scientist, I'm a researcher, evidence of this identity, loyalty, and employees. I'm going to show you some really quick results that sort of typify the typical finding. They're not super shocking, but they are empirical validation of the concepts of what we talk about in terms of the notion of identity. Yeah, I hear you, Kim. I had to unplug, hurt my wallet. I hear you. I hear you. I mean, it doesn't last forever. It doesn't last forever. But guess what? It can last a really long time. And you can do like incremental product innovation, but the loyalists will still be there with you. And so totally on the train. That's what Sean says. Yep. This is what we find. Very, very, very much the case that people buy into it. But think about that. Think about, guys, think about if you could take that loyalty that you feel for those products and build that inside the organization. The same kind of loyalty with the employees, identity loyalty. Lots of evidence of this. I'm going to show you some really quick studies. These are studies, the typical kind of study that you see. When you try to look at what's the relationship between potential employees that haven't come on board yet, their level of potential identification with you, what you find is the typical kind of finding here, whereby it's something different. It's not the economic value. It's not the pure professional development value. It's the social value. It's the diversity value. It's the reputational value of the employer brand that drives identification. Why does that matter? Because when you look at identification, guys, listen to me very carefully. Identification is not the same as satisfaction, right? Economic value, development value, those kinds of things drive satisfaction, but those are like table stakes. You have to have these other kinds of things, these aspects that are going to really create identification with the brand. And those things have to do with social value, right? Reputational value, being a part of something. One of the comments here said that, listen, one of the things that younger employees, yes, younger employees are absolutely more interested in kind of the ethical stance of the company, right? And so this notion of the Babby actually, Gen Y and Z's are very clear that their brands need to be ethical. It's not just about giving me the right workplace. It's about, what do you stand for? What's your why? Are you treating companies badly, right? This is what happened with Uber. Who is the man or woman at the helm? What are their values? There used to be a time, guys, where you never saw the CEO, right? You never knew who she was. You never saw the CMO, the CFO, the CIO. You never saw these people. But now, younger consumers are saying, listen, we want to know what you stand for. We want to know how you treat your employees. We want to know how you treat the environment. I want to know if I invest my resources into your company, if I identify as this PowerPoint slide shows, what is the reputation of the social types of things that you're doing that are going to make things connect with me. And it's so powerful. And the other thing that I think is interesting, Kim said, it's about creating fandom. She used the sports analogy. I love the sports analogy. Guys, the sports analogy, when you see soccer, football, it's football. The real name is football. Soccer, some people call it soccer. It's called football. But when you see football, the beautiful sport is also a term we think about. When you see people, that's it, stop work. Let's stop work. We cannot go to work. We have to go watch our team play. We have to watch our team play, and everyone's in that fervor of fandom, right? It's like, it's identity loyalty. That's what you're looking at when you see that. And my question to you is, human resource strategist, why can't we pull that fan? Why can't we create that fandom? Maybe we can't create it with the same amplification and intensity as an international football team, but we can get close. That's my point. So identification is not satisfaction. We're not just trying to get satisfied employees. We're trying to get identified employees. We're trying to get people that are really into what it is that we're doing, and so on and so forth. Lots of studies out there. This is another complicated study. This is it's called the structural equation model. Lots of stuff, lots of arrows. The only thing you need to care about is what's going on the right-hand side here, participation. What I'm going to point to you here is to say, listen, role identity internalization. What that means, identity loyalty. That means people have bought into your why. You look at that compared to what's this box or this oval called compliance, right? So one way to get employees to do stuff is to get them to just sort of follow rules, right? That's very different. That's called compliance. That's very different from role identity internalization. When you get people identity loyal, you get them participating more. You get them talking about you more, right? They'll do the recruiting for you. Right? Positive word of mouth, enroll brand building behavior. Retention is higher for those employees that are identity loyal. So there's a lot of drivers of identity loyalty, lots of different types of studies. I could go on and on. I could show you 100 of these types of studies, but I want to start talking about internalizing the brand and employees. What do we do to sort of do some of this stuff and actually bring it into the organization? Because you guys are very much concerned with this notion of, how do I take on these strategies and build the strongest human talent? Question here: how does employee loyalty sync with employee engagement? Totally syncs. They're almost perfectly correlated, Pamela. I mean, it's incredible. Is it when you get someone to be when they are, guys? I'm sorry, I got to calm down because I'm excited. I haven't been out of the house in 2 months. But when you guys are able to get your employees to put their identities into what they're doing, it doesn't even feel like work anymore, right? What happens is they actually start, it feels like I'm not working, I'm being who I am. So it changes, it reimagines the entire experience, the entire engagement. It's absolutely incredible, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we're doing. And so I love this. But I want to show you a couple of things that I know we don't have a ton of time here, but I want to show you some of the employees internalizing the brand. This is what we're talking about. The customer's identity that they're, the end consumer. Employees' identity at the bottom, that's huge here. So we've got the company, we've got brands, we've got customers. Guys, if one of these falls out, the whole thing falls apart. That's my point here in this picture. And the employee's identity has to also matter, right? So we need to recognize that retention starts with recruiting. Oh, come on. Retention starts right from the beginning, from the application of processing to screening, applicants choosing who to interview. It starts with identifying guys, listen to me, aspects of culture and strategy you want to emphasize and seek. This is basically, are you articulating your why? Are you using your why as a way to attract potential human talent? How does your why play a role in actually recruiting people, right? Does your organization select, message, and review the internal talent as a function of your why, right? What's the meaning system that you've created for your human talent, right? What are those values and ideals? Are they explicit? Are they written down somewhere? Yes, lots of companies have, quote, a mission statement, but I cannot tell you how many companies have that mission statement in a drawer. Guys, in a drawer, it doesn't do anything. It's not a marketing exercise. The values, the ideals of the company have to be what? Authentic. They have to be real. So the question is, how do I bring this into my protocol, right? How do I use my brand? How exactly does your organization use its brand to select new colleagues? Does your brand, does your why, does your organizational culture play a role in how you review employee performance, how you select, all of these things, right? You guys, here's the problem. If you have a brand and it's just a logo and a tagline, and you haven't, and you're not eating it, living it, sleeping it, eating it, breathing it, then inside the building, then if you're not doing that, then you're missing the opportunity to create that gravitational pull that's going to bring the type of employee in that you really, really want. I ask this all the time, what's the percentage of the companies that use the brand as part of selection and review? It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking how low these numbers are across various domains, and we can have that conversation if you want to talk about it. I want to talk about Amazon real quick as a company that does a lot of this stuff, using the brand in the HR process. Jeff Bezos, by the way, he's going to come out of post-COVID stronger. Jeff Bezos, I mean, I'm not really a fan of him personally, but I have to say the guy is like playing six-dimensional chess. Everybody else is playing tic-tac-toe. He said, listen, I'm going to focus in on the customer. You can't be a part of my you cannot be a part of my company if you don't have inside of you DNA that says customer is the most important thing and the only thing. Delight the customer, right? So what did he do? He created this ecosystem where he's going to make it absolutely frictionless for you to press a button and get something, right? He's going to make sure that this process, this consumer journey is as seamless as possible. And he's going to put the customer first. I've had stuff delivered to me from Amazon, and I'm like, what's this? I didn't order this. I call up Amazon. I said, well, why'd you send me this? He said, it was a mistake. I'm like, okay, well, I got to send it back. They say to me, no, just keep it. Just keep it. Like, listen, we made a mistake. We're fine. And so it's this understanding, like, we're going to make your life as easy as possible, right? So the question becomes, what are they doing over there? Customer obsession. So the value in this case that Bezos is going to try to endow everyone inside the organization is to become customer obsessed. Here's what he said in 2016. There are many ways to center a business. You can be competitor focused, you can be product focused, you can be technology focused, you can be business model focused, and there are more. But in my view, here's what he said, obsessive customer focus is by far the most protective of day one vitality. And he still believes this. He still believes this. And I'll bet every single person on this call right now has used Amazon or Amazon Prime in the last week. I'm willing to bet, right? He's killing it, and he will continue to kill it. Why? Because he says, listen, there's identity salience. I have a goal here, and I'm going to create guys, listen to me. I'm going to create an interview process that reflects this vision that I have. I'm going to create that process, right? And so this is the type of thing that you do. You build it into your selection format. You build the motivational, the behavioral, and the situational queries that when you're talking to a potential colleague in that organization, you're looking for responses that reflect that value of extreme customer obsession. So the response criteria is customer-centric values, right? Tell me about a time that you used data to better understand your customers. This is not a question about data. Someone will go into, what this is meant to sociologically unpack. What are they looking for? An example of how that particular human resource candidate used the skills, yes, to identify a deep customer insight because they care deeply about trying to please that customer and really give that customer the highest intense level of a value proposition that they can possibly give. So so you're building it into the actual selection process. And so it's very, very powerful when you do this stuff. And by the way, I'll just say this, many of our students at Wharton get jobs at Amazon. Here's something very interesting that I've noticed. This is anecdotal. I don't have a study on this, but it's anecdotal. What I've noticed is that the response to working at Amazon is very bimodal. You either love it, these are what the students have told me. They either love it or they hate it. And what that's saying is that there's such a strong organizational culture there. You are going to be like super aligned with it. This is my thing, or it's just not going to be. It's so clear what it is. It's just not going to be your thing if it's not. And it's going to be very clear to you that it's not your thing. And so it's very, very, very powerful stuff here in terms of those concepts. But this is just a sort of concept to sort of say that this customer obsessed value or ideal has not changed since the founding of the company and so on and so forth. So here's what I'm saying. Key touch points to assess your organizational culture. Here's what I'm asking you guys. Your why. Where does your why live? Where does it live? Is it touching people, brands, consumers on the website? The application interview process for employees, is it part of it? Is it part of organizational visits, tours? Is it part of questions and in interviews? Is it part of the post-visit survey? Are you capturing this information? Do you gather this information and do you try to distill it into an assessment of the potential synchronicity of what it is your why is with that particular human resource talent? And so my point that I have to say is a brand becomes a brand. We go back to the original conversation we were having when I was showing you those logos or those brands and you were reacting to them. Those words that you were typing into the chat, those are the associations that you as human resource talent inside the building are going to try to create inside the minds of these employees. And you have every opportunity when you touch those employees to activate and reinforce that value system that's important to your organizational culture. And if you're doing that across all the touch points, you are maximizing the ability to have a robust, reinforced brand of your organization to that potential employee. And again, it's okay. This will be for some people and not for others. That's okay. But the point is you're trying to gravitationally pull those employees that are going to be most potentially able to be aligned and care about and have deep passion about your why. Okay. So these are some broad steps. I know we're pushing up on time here. How much time do I have, Mike? Just want to check in with you real quick.
We've got just about seven minutes left.
Okay. I'm going to just jump through this. I'm going to jump to questions quickly. So what I'm going to have Mike do, Mike is going to be able to share all of this with you. I got tons of stuff. I can keep going. Guys, I'm excited. I got tons of stuff. I could keep going all day on this. I've got a bunch of things that Mike will share with you. He's going to give you this deck. You can take a look at it. You can focus and come back to me on any of these things, how leaders can affect the organizational brand. There's 4 areas here that I talk about, that questions to ask yourself that really are the centerpieces of making sure that you're on this correct road to identity loyalty and basically empowering the why within your organization. Lots of different specific questions that you can ask. Mike will share all of this with you. But I wanted to make sure that some of the critical takeaways, building this brand from within. Guys, you have to catch this. I'm telling you, post-COVID, man, we're going to be in a new world order. And so if you're not endowing the people inside the building to connect and to connect with each other and you as leaders, as C-suite leaders, you're missing an opportunity, right? So it's about employee brand internalization, taking on that culture and being able to create a strong emotional tie to the people inside the building, because if they believe it, if they eat it, sleep it, breathe it, then it's easier for that reality to organically spread to the marketplace. And by the way, you can create this, if you're able to do this right, you can create identity loyalty. And maybe one day you can have people like tattoo guys, listen to tattooing your company on their bodies permanently. That's the epitome. That's the marketing nirvana. That is the apex of identity loyalty. So with that, my information, Mike's going to share my information here, and we're going to be able to have this conversation. This is just, guys, listen to me very carefully. This is the beginning of the conversation. It's the beginning of the conversation. You can reach out to me at here on any of these 2 emails. I'm on LinkedIn. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Follow me on Twitter at AMREED2. AmericasRead.com is my website. I just jumped on the gram. I'm older, so listen, I'm not ready for TikTok, okay, but I am on the gram, Professor Americas, one word, on Instagram if you want to follow me there. We can keep this conversation going. We can talk about this. Guys, this is an imperative. You don't have a choice now. You have to build this inside the organization now because it's going to be coming out of post-COVID in a new world. So reach out to me at any time to have these conversations. I'll pause there, Mike, and jump into any questions that our colleagues have here. With respect to anything I've talked about, if you think pushback, constructive feedback, criticism, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Americus. Appreciate this. This has been incredible. And I know the chat people have said this has been worth the price of admission alone. So appreciate you doing this today. There is a question in the Q&A, and this is just classic L&D. Thank you, Tom, for this. He's looking at it meta. He wants to know, how do you bring so much excitement to your presentations?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I love this. Who gave that question?
That was Tom Lewis.
Hi, Tom. Tom Lewis. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you very much. And you want to know why? Here's something I learned a long time ago, and it's a point that I think is powerful, and I think is actually related to this. A long time ago, they used to say, we used to tell our students at Wharton, we used to tell them, you have a professional identity and you have a personal identity. Never let those 2 things cross. In the professional workplace, put the tie on, do the thing, do the role. And now it's like, no, what you actually want to do is you want to bring your authentic personal identity, your authentic self directly to your professional life. That's what I do. I love this stuff because I'm a student of life. I want to learn. And it's because it's so interesting to me, it's hard for me not to be passionate about it. So this is not work for me. This is like the calling to talk about this, to engage with smart colleagues like yourself, and to have conversations where I can understand this better. I can understand how I can help you make this work inside your organization, all those wonderful things. Easy to be passionate when you bring your authentic self to what you're doing, and you're trying to get your employees to do that as well.
Yeah. All right. I saw this question in the chat, and I wasn't able to write down who it was, but the question had to do with culture versus cult. How do you, make sure that you're staying on the right side of that spectrum?
Excellent. That's a great point. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's tough because it is a double-edged sword, right? So what you really, here's the way I look at it. I look at identity branding, identity loyalty, and I look at it like a hammer. So it's like, a hammer is not inherently good or bad, right? You can take a hammer and you can build a home for an elderly person, or you can take a hammer and hit that elderly person over the head and take their wallet, right? But the hammer isn't evil. The hammer is just a tool. And the way I look at it is that identity loyalty, building that identity, building a cult, the word cult, building it in the right way so that the ethics and the values are those values that are morally upright. And that's going to differ across people. But those values are there and doing and happening and manifesting in a way that, quote, is correct. Now, there'll be some debate about what is correct versus what is not. But I think the point is that you don't want mindless. That's a good point. Now we're getting somewhere. You don't want, cult is like mindless, right? I just go along and I'm not thinking. What you want is, you want a thinker. You want a collaborator. You want a co-creator. You want that person to be with you, developing and growing with you. And that's very different. A cult, that's not what happens in a cult. What happens in the culture is that you have this aspirational kind of, the Jedi and the Padawan learner are going together. They're not just mindlessly going, but they're going in a direction where they can evolve and reach high levels of aspirations and higher levels of self-actualization, to use almost Maslowian terms here, in that sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Hey, we got time for one more if you got time, Americus.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So it's actually a comment coming from Liza in the chat. And she says, I wish my executive leadership would listen to this because this brings value to HR like nothing before. Any recommendations you'd have to sort of help her do that? How can we bring this message from the people who are in this conversation, in this presentation right now, and take this energy and passion and make the connection? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have my deck. I think you can take it and you can. I also have some smaller piece of information I'm happy to share, like not brochures, but they're like little pieces of collateral that I'm happy to share with you. I think you have, guys, you have to do it. You have to preach. You have to preach. You have to take it to the boardroom. You have to take it, because here's a really important point that you're making. If the belief is not at the high, it usually flows top down. If the higher ups, if the C-suite doesn't believe it, it's not going to happen. Right? That's very clear. You can look at my deck on some of these other issues of creating that management imperative. But it's going to require creating a movement inside the organization. And if at the top they don't want to hear it, you're going to have a big challenge. But there are ways you just have to keep preaching it. You have to keep going over and over and showing this is the huge empirical evidence that this is really, really effective in organizations, if that makes sense. I'm happy to help you try to do that in any way possible, by the way.
Yeah. Well, Americus, thank you so much for being here with us on our final day of the CELO Symposium. You brought the energy, you brought the passion, and it's just been an incredibly inspiring message, and I know the attendees appreciate it too. So thank you so much, and we'll hopefully our paths will cross again soon.
Absolutely, and guys, please reach out. Mike's going to share the deck. Reach out. Let's connect. Let's keep the conversation going. This is just the beginning, and I appreciate you guys' time on a Wednesday.